somebody reached out to me about this person here, and they had linked me a video, which we're going to watch. And this is from this person named Abelina Sabrina. And they said, "Hey, Bobby, I don't know if you're a fan or know of Gus Johnson," which I don't. If you are or do, I think it would be very worth your time to look into Gus's ex Sabrina's video. He basically forced her to have to get an abortion, and then she almost passed away from late diagnosed ectopic pregnancy. I'm not 100% sure what that is. We should probably just look into that in a second. He wasn't supportive through any of it, and he admits to all of this in his Twitter. Here's a video. So, you know, let's see. An ectopic pregnancy is a complication of pregnancy in which the embryo attaches outside the uterus. Signs of symptoms, classic. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's look. I mean, I'm gonna watch this. This seems pretty intense. I'm gonna look at his response first to see what he does. Acknowledge. But so this is what he had said. I'm aware of recent videos that call out some actions that I'm not proud of, and I want to apologize. The circumstances were extremely hard and complicated for both of us, but I can't even begin to imagine how difficult it was for her. We were young and not remotely prepared to deal with all the realities of long-lasting and traumatic medical situation. During the talks, counseling, and therapy we went through together following this time, I came to grips with my behavior and recognized my shortcomings, and I would like her to know how deeply sorry I am. I fully realized what I did was wrong, and I wish I could change how I responded and acted during the time. I've grown a great deal since that happened, and I wish I knew then what I know now. I will continue to grow and learn and strive to be a better person every day. At this time, I'm stepping away from the podcast, and the remainder of this year's live shows will be canceled with full refunds being issued. I will also be taking some time off posting from work for a while. Okay. So, let's see. So I guess we'll probably figure out. So this guy is. I'm just trying to figure out his age first. So he's 26. Okay. So there's obviously a few different things we need to go through. I don't know how long this happened, when they, if they're still together, if they broke up, but I'm sure we'll get some of this information through this video here. From what it sounds like, and I'm coming into the situation fresh, which I know a lot. I honestly think is a good thing because it'll allow me to be as unbiased as possible. This seems to have happened a bit of a while ago, and they said they were not prepared to deal with the realities of long-lasting and traumatic medical situation. So it sounds like that pregnancy, so based on this, it seems like he may have tried to compel her to get an abortion because of how, I guess, the medical condition associated with the pregnancy. But we're going to look into this, and we're going to see what's going on here. She released this, what, 5 days ago? Okay.
Oh, hello.
This is very low. I'm going to turn myself down a little bit.
On this very day, a certain number of years ago, I was in the hospital dying. It was the worst experience of my entire life, and I don't recommend it. 10 out of 10, don't recommend, not even with rice. And I was alone for most of it. But little by little, as I did open up to some friends, I ended up finding that similar stuff like this happens. I don't even know where to go from here. Let me just backtrack and show you guys how I got there. So years ago, I found out that I was pregnant, and I did not want to be. I was not ready for that. And as soon as I confirmed it at home, I made a doctor's appointment. And
okay.
And I went immediately just to get a second confirmation and just find out where to go from there. I had Kaiser Permanente at the time. They suck. First of all, Kaiser, you suck. I'm so happy I'm not with you anymore. But even though we're in California, the bluest state probably.
I'm assuming that's is that a healthcare or like what am I looking for? Health insurance? Is that what they're talking about?
In the whole country, you still have to go through quite a few hoops to terminate a pregnancy, and it's scary. And even at the first doctor's appointment, I think it didn't fully set in what was happening. They had to refer me out to Planned Parenthood because Kaiser Permanente refused to do it, which is wild. So they referred me out to Planned Parenthood.
It's a pretty big problem. There's a lot of facilities that will say they'll help you, get an abortion, but they end up just trying to force you to go through hoops in order to get it, so that they try to run the clock out on you so that you basically can't get one, is what they do, and they try to basically guilt you. At the end of the day, it's a very tough decision to make, and I don't think that women who are trying to make that decision, or mostly women, should have all these pressures. It's not like an easy decision. For some people, maybe it is. Those people are probably shitty. For most people, it's not an easy decision. It's hard, and it's stressful. So
I, made the appointment there. I went, and they couldn't see anything, which was weird because I was certainly far enough along for something to be seen, and they couldn't see anything. So they thought, well, maybe you're not as far along as we thought. Come back in 2 weeks or something, which, when you're trying to not be pregnant anymore is not what you want to hear at all, especially when most of the medical workers that you've been interacting with have been telling you things like, are you sure you want to do this? You have to be 100% sure. If you're even 99% sure, we're not going to let you do this. So
yeah, I mean, I think that last one's shitty. I don't think it's bad fundamentally to make sure that somebody is sure they want to do something like as serious. It's a very big decision. Because there's pros and cons on both. Well, there's probably pros and cons. It's regardless of it's a tough situation. It's not easy to make the choice to terminate a pregnancy. So I understand them asking, but in that scenario, a lot of times when you walk in and you're like, I want to do this, you're looking to just get it done and get out. And I don't think that, I don't know. There's just a lot going on. It's not really professional to question somebody's decision in this way. I understand advocates, but as a healthcare worker, you shouldn't,
It sticks with you a little bit. I always knew that I had to end it, but it's just harder when you're getting a lot of opposing pressure to not do it from medical staff and honestly your own body. It's so weird. Like once you get those hormones in your body, there's like this instinct that kicks in that makes you want to protect it, even though your brain is like, no, we're not ready for this. This was always the plan. If this happened, you promised your boyfriend that we would do this. So it was really scary to be receiving all this conflicting pressure from medical staff and your body to not do it, and then being pressured by your partner to do it. It felt like I didn't even have a choice. It really felt like I wasn't even allowed to consider.
I'm assuming the boyfriend was Gus, right? Okay.
What would happen if I didn't? And I'm reiterating over and over. I mean, look at my appointments. To not do it, and then being pressured all this. And if this happened, you promised your boyfriend that we would do this. So it was.
What I find, this is something I find interesting. Okay, this is just something
for this and that makes you want to.
This is here,
even though your brain is like, no, we're not ready for this. This was always the plan. If this happened, you promised your boyfriend that we would do this.
So here's my thing, right? Is that the way that I think that you should generally engage is as safe as possible, right? And I understand abortion being there potentially if you need it. I get it. However, it's bizarre to me that you would specifically, as the boyfriend, be like, hey, if you get pregnant, like, you should get an abortion. It's just kind of a weird interaction because to me, and I could be wrong, I could be speculating, it suggests that there was they were being generally unsafe. Possibly pressured by the boyfriend to be unsafe for more pleasure. And at least he, because he was like, from what she's saying is that he pressured her. It seems that he's trying to say like, yeah, I want to engage in unsafe sex, and then if something happens, we'll just get an abortion. And I don't think that that's the correct way to orchestrate yourself in any situation, right? I understand using it as like a last resort. I get it. But if you feel like the type of sex that you're engaging in will lead to getting pregnant, then you shouldn't be engaging in it, right? Wear a condom or something. You understand what I'm saying? I just, to me, there's no reason to have this conversation beforehand unless you're engaging in this type, in like a more risky situation. No.
So it was really scary to be receiving all this.
I think you're reading too much into it. I don't think that I'm reading too much into it, to be honest with you. I know that some guys have that mindset, but like, you should, like, those are the guys who will have sex without a condom. Right? So like, I'm just saying that if you're having this pre-discussion, it's probably because for what reason? Why would you have this? Probably because you're engaging in unsafe sex. It's not like a super in-depth take. I think it's a pretty reasonable common sense take. So
conflicting pressure from medical staff and your body to not do it, and then being pressured by your partner.
Condoms do break. You're right. But usually if you're engaging with sex in a condom, you're probably not considering the alternative that you're going to get pregnant, right? So what we have to understand is that it's not. My point is if they thought there's no reason to. Generally, if you're using a condom, you probably wouldn't assume you're going to get pregnant. So it seems bizarre to me. That they would have this like pre-planned idea of like, oh, you should get an abortion if you get pregnant. I don't know. It seems I've never had that interaction. I don't know anybody who's ever like had that interaction. It just seems a little bit bizarre to me. Like, I'm not saying that I've never considered it. I'm just saying that this pre-planned notion means that I think that you're engaging in unsafe sex practices and that you probably should have curtailed that.
Partner to do it. It felt like I didn't even have a choice. It really felt like I wasn't even allowed to consider what would happen if I didn't. And I'm reiterating over and over. I mean, look at my appointments. This was always
Jesus
what
Christ.
I was going to do. I was constantly taking the steps to end the pregnancy. But it's really scary when somebody's forcing you to do it. Scary when somebody's forcing you to do it.
Listen, I'm gonna nitpick this video, but
to do, I was constantly taking the steps to end the pregnancy.
It's
really scary when somebody's forcing you to do it.
Okay, so something that I don't like about this video, I'm have to nitpick it, is I don't like the zoom in.
See. I
don't like this.
But it's really scary when somebody's forcing you to do it.
And the reason I don't like it is because it comes off very disingenuous, right? So, like, I understand making this video, I understand her getting upset, but when you zoom in on your face afterwards, to me, that's trying to emphasize how upset you are. And then it kind of comes off to me as a little more of a performance. And I'm not saying that it is, but like I feel like this should have been an unedited video. That's what it, it just seems a little, it seems a little performative. I'm sorry if that comes off as insensitive, but it's like it's a little dishonest to me. I'm also going to move my fucking thing.
And I did have moments of weakness where I would cry and say things like, okay, but honestly, like, can we just consider, like, what if we didn't do it? Still gonna do it, but can we just consider what would happen if I didn't? And he would say, like, no, it's not even a question. You're gonna ruin my life if you do that. That would be the worst thing to ever happen to me. As along the lines of things that he would say. And at one point, he even said that he would break up with me if I didn't do it. And that he would resent me and the potential child.
I mean, that's obviously terrible, yeah.
And that's really stuck with me. Because then at that point, and mind you, I haven't told anybody. I think I told one single friend. Couldn't tell my family. I couldn't talk to anybody. It was just really scary. And so at that point, it's like, well, if you're making threats like that, why should I consider you in this decision at all? And so I did start to think a little bit more. Should I actually end it? And it's true. That was me reneging. Because I feel like when you start a relationship, you have the conversation of, hey, if you get pregnant, what's the plan? And of course, it's so easy to say like, oh yeah, absolutely, I'm not ready to be a parent yet. No, not anytime soon.
So I know I have a lot of people in the chat that are like, oh, well, she agreed to it beforehand. So you got to understand that, like, okay, first and foremost, fundamentally, and this is something that a lot of people have an issue that don't really seem to understand. Being pro-choice isn't about everybody getting a choice. It's about a woman getting a choice, right? It's the woman's choice to have an abortion. There are, in general, biological predispositions. There are biological advantages to being both a man and a woman. And I know that there's trans people. We're just not going to get into it because this isn't what this is about. And so, like, men have the general biological advantage of being stronger. And then we get to praise that in society. Yay for men. Well, women have the biological advantage of having a baby, so they get to decide whether or not to keep it. I don't like the general and I'm pro-choice, but I don't like the general pro-choice narrative of men saying like, well, if a woman can choose, why can't I? It's like, you can, but you deserve to be socially shamed, because ultimately pro-choice is about empowering women. And I know people are like, well, everything needs to be equal. Life isn't really about direct equality. Life is about, like, life is about general equality, right? Equality of opportunity. Men don't have the opportunity to have an abortion, so they don't really get to have the legal say-so in an abortion. Now I know a lot of people are having, I need you guys to chill in the chat a little bit. But I understand that, like, hey, I understand that they seem to both like made a social contract of like, yeah, if I get pregnant, I'm gonna have an abortion. Problem is that as a man, you're just not gonna really get it, and I'm not either. But she was talking about before, there are hormonal changes when you have a baby. I have friends who have had their wives have had miscarriages. And there's a common theme, and that is that when there's a miscarriage, the man isn't as nearly as impacted as a woman is. Because the second that baby's inside of you as a woman, it's a person to you. And it makes the decision to get an abortion very, 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 very difficult. And it's not something that you can really empathize with as a man. But for the men, right, when they have this miscarriage, the women are usually devastated by it. But the men are like upset more that their wife is upset than they lost at their kid. More than they're upset that they lost the kid. Because to a man, it's not a kid yet. It's just in the womb. You don't really see it. You see your pregnant wife. A woman sees it as a child in most cases. And so I think it's very difficult to say, yep, I'm just going to get an abortion, and expect a woman to maintain that decision once her entire her hormone cycle changes and like you introduce new factors that you'll never understand. Ultimately, like this isn't the type of a social contract that you can really maintain. I don't think that this is the type of social contract that like you can blame somebody for. You can say like, hey, I think if we ever got pregnant, we should get an abortion. But when it comes down to it, she gets the choice regardless. And as a man, I mean, you can be a scumbag and decide to leave, I suppose. But, don't engage in the action then. And I know people are going to say, well, that's hypocritical, Papa Gut, because women can make the choice. Well, that's good for women. You can too. You can walk away like a scum fuck, but you're a net loss to society. Don't engage in an action you're not ready for. I don't know what to tell you. I know that you guys want to make this black and white, pro-life versus pro-choice. I'm pro-choice with responsibility. Yeah, it does make him a scumbag. Absolutely. I think that deadbeat dads are scumbags. I don't really care if she agreed. So I think that like you don't have to be with the girl, but you should take care of your kid. So I mean, shaming a woman and saying like, oh, you're going to ruin my life, I'm going to leave you, I'm going to resent you and the baby if you have my baby, that's manipulative and shitty. That's like very shitty. And again, I know that she agreed, but like listen to what I'm saying.
Soon. But God, it's so much scarier when it's happening to you in real life. So that was really hard. And then I just kept having pain and bleeding, and nobody took me seriously.
Sorry for cutting off. Somebody said, coming from me, a mother, a person who suffered a miscarriage, and a person who had a surprise pregnancy, it's so different looking in from the outside, and said, yeah, I want to make this choice. It becomes entirely different when you're in the moment, in the situation. Hormones all over the place. Everything changes. I agree. 100%. I understand what you're saying. Well, as much as I can.
And then one morning, I woke up at about 4 a.m. to the most intense pain I've ever felt in my life in my lower left abdomen. And it was so sharp and painful. I went to the bathroom because, all of a sudden I'm bleeding a lot, which can't be normal. And I couldn't even stand up because the pain was just so intense. I went to the doctor multiple times. And one of the first times I went, the lady was just like, well, just take some Tylenol and go home. What do you want me to do? And then I went again later that day because I was still having so much pain. And they said, oh, you're probably miscarrying. Go bleed it out at home.
Jesus
and then,
Christ.
Over the course of the next few days,
that's horrible.
I'm just taking medicine to manage the pain, which is constant, and I'm still bleeding a lot. My appetite is weird. Even eating something as small as a grape caused so much pain, so I wasn't really eating. But my stomach was growing a lot. For the span of a few days, my stomach probably expanded from here to here. And it didn't make sense. And I would call the advice nurse and they would say, oh, you're probably gassy. And so, I did take things like Gas X and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think this is helping. And I'm still in a lot of pain. And you know what? It's just so frustrating too, because I know at multiple visits I did request imaging and I never got it. Like, not like the imaging where like they go on top of the tummy, because that's not in depth. Like, I asked for like more intensive imaging, like where they actually go in, and they wouldn't do it. And I really wish that they would have. I was at work and, you know, trying to suck it up. And then all of a sudden, the weirdest painful sensation came over me again. But this time, it made me really dizzy and faint, and my heart was just racing, and I had this pain in my lower abdomen. I just knew something was wrong. And so I left work early. I called my boyfriend, and I told him, something's wrong. I'm going to the hospital again. I don't feel well. Something is wrong. And he said, okay, well, I have work to do, and it involves other people, and then we're going to go out and get dinner and drinks with them. So I had to go to the hospital alone. And I was there for about 4 hours by myself.
Yeah, so like there seems to be like a pattern of insensitivity on this situation, right? It doesn't even matter. We're not even at the point of like an abortion at this point. We're still at the point of like your girlfriend is bleeding profusely and having like significant amounts of pain, and you're not really taking it seriously, and that's a problem. And it's also, I think this is a lesson to a lot of you guys, and this is something that I want you guys to personalize a lot, regardless of whether you're like what gender you are or whatever. Is that like a lot of times doctors will kind of just dismiss you and not really give a shit, right? And so you have to be aggressive sometimes. Sometimes you have to be an asshole to doctors and not care and just demand care, because they'll give it to you if you fucking act like a total douchebag. Sometimes you need to act like a piece of shit, because I'll give you like a little anecdote, and this isn't about pregnancy, but so my uncle passed away, due to COVID. Like, he was like a father to me, and I remember that day. And my mom went to the hospital with and that was her brother with and he was there with his wife, my aunt, and they were there, and they didn't want to do a COVID test on my aunt. They didn't want to really test her. They were kind of brushing her off, and my mom just wouldn't stop until she's like, we're not going to leave until we do it. And she just gave him a ton of shit until, they went from like the doctor to doctor and it kind of went up the chain. They're like, yeah, of course we'll do it for you. That's just what you have to do. You have to be very aggressive sometimes, and it's a lesson to a lot of you guys, because sometimes they're going to brush you off, and they're not going to give a shit about what you have to say. And so sometimes you have to be very aggressive.
Most of it in the waiting room. Just feeling like I'm dying the whole time. And finally they call me back and they do tests and imaging, and I still remember when they took me down to radiology to do my ultrasound. Finally, I'm getting the in-depth ultrasound. And if you guys know anything about ultrasounds, you know that the techs are not allowed to tell you your diagnosis at all. You have to hear it from a doctor. And so I'm laying there, and I still remember it perfectly. The ultrasound tech is in there, and she seems confused by something. So she gets another tech's input. I don't know if it's like her manager or just another person. And then the other tech goes, yeah, that's her uterus. And then the original tech says, no, that's her uterus. And I'm just laying there like, what are you talking about? What's happening? And they wouldn't tell me anything, of course, because that's part of, their job. Like, they can't, just in case they're wrong. They need a doctor to look at it. So finally, they sent me back upstairs, and I'm still alone, and my phone is dying. I'm hoping that my boyfriend can come as soon as he can. And I decide, because I parked at like a high up level, I'm like, well, since it's nighttime now, I don't want to have to take an elevator or stairs because I won't feel safe. I'm gonna move my car to the first level now that it's starting to clear up. And I get in my car, and I didn't put my seatbelt on. I was in a parking garage. I was going like 5 miles an hour. And something about the beep of the seatbelt that needed to be clicked was just so ominous and foreshadowing. It sounded like a heart monitor. I just knew there was something wrong. I just knew it.
Like, so far, emotionally, I'm with her. I just don't like the editing. It just makes me, it pulls the tone away a little bit. It kind of pulls me out of it, and it's like a little frustrating, because like, this is, I don't know, when I feel, and I know I'm being nitpicky, but I think it's appropriate, because we have to understand that she made this video. which seems like she's pouring her heart out. And then she had either she did it or she had somebody else edit it to make it as emotionally impactful as possible. And I don't like that because this isn't a movie. This is real life. And so to me, it comes off as a little bit tone deaf to edit in seatbelt sounds. Even the fire in the background is a little annoying because it was intentional. Because they separately recorded her speaking and the background fire. Those are two different recordings. I know that. And so, like, there's a lot of ambience set up, and maybe she didn't edit it, maybe she had somebody else edit it, but she still made the conscious decisions. Like, they just had a seatbelt beeping louder and louder, and it's like, okay, I don't know. It makes I feel like when we tell really serious stories, we should be outside of the habit of doing things like this that will add a little bit of like sensationalization to it. You know, make it genuine. Just make the video. Right? And I'm not trying to discredit her. It's more of an issue that I have with the way that people frame very serious topics on YouTube. But it's a little off-putting.
Parked my car, got my charger, went inside, charged my phone. Finally, it seems like boyfriend is on his way, so that's nice. And he comes right in time to get the diagnosis. I had an ectopic pregnancy in my left fallopian tube. It ruptured. I've been bleeding internally ever since. They were surprised I wasn't dead. And that if I don't have surgery right then and there, I was going to die for sure.
Jesus Christ.
And as an added bonus, the surgery might not go well, and I might die during that too.
This is why you have to be super aggressive with your doctors.
So, here, sign these waivers and paperwork, because you don't have a choice anymore. Really felt like my body, my choice never got to even apply to me. And that part really sucked. So, yeah, for those of you who are wondering, in my nose video that I recently uploaded about when I talked about the traumatic OR experience that I had, there it is. A month ago for my nose, I was in a totally safe environment, safe OR. The PTSD, I just had a moment. I felt like I was back in that first Kaiser Permanente OR all over again. And I burst into tears and had a panic attack. And yeah, it's really affected me ever since. Anyway, the surgery ended up starting at like 10 or 11. It ended around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., something like that. I barely remember coming out of it. I think I remember asking Dr. Friend, which is funny that the on-call surgeon was named Dr. Friend. She was very, very kind about it. But they went in there with a little laparoscopic surgery, and they made 2 incisions right here on my lower abdomen, and they also went in through my belly button. Yeah, my entire left right here on my...
sorry. I'm not like laughing. It's just like I see this here, and it's just like, oh, I think you might need to tone up your stomach area, and it's kind of gross and flabby. But I do have post-nut clarity. It's like a little weird to add. Like, first of all, that guy's obviously an asshole, but second of all, like, why not edit that out? It's just like weird. It's just like a weird choice to not edit this out. The reason, then, like, again, I think that this is probably her editor more than anything else. But the reason I find it weird is it's like, well, what did this benefit the video? Other than to, I guess, call this person out for body shaming and to, you know, maybe try to generate sympathy. I don't really know.
My lower abdomen, and they also went in through my belly button. Yeah, my entire left fallopian tube exploded, so I don't have that anymore.
Jeez.
She was able to save my ovaries, so that's nice. They're just kind of like stuck onto the actual uterus, so I still have them for like hormone purposes. I can't use them. So there go half my ovaries. And now I'm at a higher risk of having...
post-nut clarity is part of her merch? Okay, interesting.
This happened to me again if I ever become pregnant again. You know, they say, oh yeah, people have ectopic pregnancies and they end up having children later. But I don't read a lot about what happens like if you have like an ectopic rupture. That's what I'm a little scared of. Anyway, so surgery finished, and I didn't even consent to this because clearly like I was under like general anesthesia and barely waking up. I did not consent to being kicked out at 3 a.m., but they did. They wheeled me out, and I couldn't even really stand up all that well by myself. I was extremely nauseous, and it was awful. And a boyfriend drove me back to his place because I still didn't get to tell anybody right before surgery. Just in case it did go wrong, I called my mom and I lied and I said it was an ovarian cyst. It's not a big deal, but I just want to let you know what hospital I'm at. Don't come, because I didn't want anybody to find out. Don't come. But yeah, I didn't really tell her how severe it was. I remember even before surgery too, once I found out what was about to happen, I called my sister and I'm like, oh hey, I'm at the hospital. And the first thing she says in the most judgmental voice is, what, you're pregnant? I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not telling you anything. So I also lied to her and told her it was an ovarian cyst. And yeah, I haven't really been able to tell people about this over the years. Just kind of had to keep it to myself. And it sucks because this thing has changed my life so much. I am not the same person I used to be. Because after that, not only do you have like the natural like postpartum of not being pregnant anymore, my hormones after that rupture were just all over the place, and there were like some little complications even from surgery after. I would just have lots of random moments of just being thrown into that feeling of what it felt to be just dying all over again at random. I had no control over it, and the only person I could really lean on was my boyfriend because I couldn't tell anybody. And I don't fully blame him because that is a lot of responsibility to put on a single person, but he started to get real sick of me. I couldn't sleep by myself for the longest time, so I was over at his place, and I'm sure his roommates, love that. But I was just broken for a really long time. I was trying to put myself through therapy. I would try to take myself to the doctor whenever, stuff would spike, and it was just the worst. And boyfriend started to resent me. And so I tried bottling it up even more and not telling him until I was absolutely certain that I needed to go to the doctor and I would not be able to drive myself. Like, if I try really hard.
So this is like a very obviously like a tough situation to be in because, when you get into a relationship with somebody, obviously, like, it doesn't mean that you're saying all their trauma is your trauma, right? I understand people have different forms of relationships and they develop at different times. I don't know how long they were dating at this point for. There's a myriad of factors, but like I come from the general idea that like when you have a partner, when you engage with somebody, when you get into a relationship, you are a level of responsible for like their happiness to an extent, right? So if they go through a traumatic event, for instance, you shouldn't be like, I don't want to deal with this. Bye. I can understand developing resentment, but that's just, I mean, like, listen, I feel honestly that's just kind of life sometimes. And I'm sure there's people that are like, no, I get it from the guy Gus's perspective. Like maybe he didn't want to do this or that, and it's like, oh, it's tough. It's like, yeah, life's tough, man. Life's really tough, and I feel like people who aren't raised like that are weak. Life's gonna beat the shit out of you. And it's gonna beat the shit out of the people around you, the people that you're in love with, and like to an extent, that's your responsibility to deal with. So. Yeah, I mean, I do look down on him as I mean, unless, and I've talked about before, I have like an idea of what it means to be like a man. It's like I look down on him for the way that he like developed this resentment towards her, and didn't seem to be supportive of her to the degree that he should have been. So
it's hard to be independent, but sometimes I just can't, and those were the moments where I just couldn't. And at one point, he was talking about how hard it was having to take care of me when I would have those moments. Mind you, I never stopped him from doing anything or going anywhere. He still continued to live his life as if nothing ever happened. And there I am in the background in the shadows, just trying to pretend that I don't feel like I'm dying. It's really hard. And then he would, sometimes tell me things like, someone else would have left you by now, right?
Yeah, so I know that I'm not laughing at her. I'm laughing because people are like, oh, she just said that she felt like he was being resentful. Okay, well, there you go. So, obviously he was resentful of her. To make a statement like that is to take a pretty hard stance of like, I mean, that's manipulative. That's what it is. That's a bad. I would consider that that's manipulative. It's shitty.
So the lack of support was really hard. And I had to put myself through therapy to try to minimize these episodes because I don't want that, and I don't want to get hooked on like Xanax or Ativan to try to like take the edge off whenever I feel it starting to creep on.
One thing I will say, and we don't have like probably don't have enough information, but she had mentioned before she didn't want to tell her family, and I feel that. Like, I get the sister, but I feel like unless there was some kind of issue she had with her mom, and it's quite possible, I don't know about it. I think that she should have told her mother about this. Like, I know it's a very tough situation, but I feel like who better to be able to help you through that than like your mother when you're a woman that had a pregnancy issue, right? Where like, you know, it's going to be very difficult for a man to relate to that. And so I'm not saying, I don't know her relationship with her mother. I know this was like a pretty traumatic event, but I think that it would have been good for her to say it. I'm not going to judge her and say that she had to have done it, that she should do it and it's her fault, because I don't know what's going on in her head. I very clearly, she's somebody going through something, you know? I think on a fundamental level, we can all empathize with that. But I think it would have been a good thing to do.
Even though it did work, but, I mean, no, benzos are just the worst. Never get reliant on
You wouldn't tell your mom? Okay, that's fair. Okay, I understand that.
It was awful, and then it would get to the point where I would ask for help.
Yeah,
take
that's
me to,
fair.
Urgent care, please. I can't drive myself. And he would say like, oh, well, call the advice nurse and then I'll take you. And then he would insist on listening to the phone call to make sure that I wasn't exaggerating my symptoms. Or even when he would come with me a few times to the doctor, he would, sit in and, correct the doctor on things that I was saying from his point of view because he didn't want me to exaggerate my symptoms. It was a lot, but it just felt like I had to grow up even faster, and it sucked. And
I wonder how old they were.
The worst things about Kaiser is you can't even sue them. If you're a Kaiser Permanente member, you automatically waive your rights to take them to court, and you have to use like their own arbitration system. So nothing ever came out of that. Don't have a fallopian tube anymore. I got dismissed multiple times by multiple doctors. I was refused when I asked for imaging. And the thing is, if we would have caught this sooner, when it comes to ectopic pregnancies, there is a shot that you can have that will terminate the pregnancy, and then you won't have a ruptured fallopian tube. But I didn't get to have that. I didn't even know what an ectopic pregnancy was. Nobody has ever taught me that. Nobody tells you how often even a miscarriage is likely to happen. Yeah, the education system really failed us. So I feel bad for the people that had the displeasure of meeting me ever since then, because I don't even know who that sad shell of a person was. I used to be like a really bright, energetic, bubbly person, and I'm starting to get bits and pieces of that back now. But for the longest time, I was just like an awkward, uncomfortable energy presence around people. There was just no way to explain why. Now, I'm not the smartest person in the world by any means. I'm actually quite bimbo. So I'm going to put some resources in the description down below about ectopic pregnancies, about miscarriages, about what to expect from pregnancy at all, or what to expect if you don't want to be pregnant and you find that you are. I'm going to include that in the description below. But I highly, highly, highly encourage you, if you ever find out that you are pregnant, try your best to make sure that whatever you decide to do is your choice. Because my biggest regret is not having one. Thanks for listening to my story. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the story again. Just a heads up, if you are still here, an ad for Fabulous is about to be played, so that way I can pay for my rent and my healthcare and never use Kaiser again. Thanks for understanding, everybody. Bye.
I don't know. For me personally, I probably wouldn't have thrown an ad in this video. There's a lot going on here. I'm sorry for laughing, but holy shit. Listen, all right. There's so much going on here. So first and foremost, I'm gonna say is that the person who sent this video to me obviously didn't frame it very well. Secondly, I would like to ask, like, how old were they at the time? I don't know that there was ever an age, and that's very relevant. Third, I think it's a little shitty to, when you're with somebody, to be that aggressive about them getting an abortion. but that wasn't the main focus. The lack of support was an issue, but it seemed like there was just a systematic lack of support across the board for her, which is terrible. I can understand why this would be very traumatizing because she almost died. You know, I probably wouldn't sit here and say that this Gus guy is like the shittiest person in the world. I personally feel that this is a cop out. I think that this is a cop out excuse. I think this is bullshit after listening to that, because here's the thing. He obviously did a shitty thing. I don't think that makes him a fundamentally shitty person. I think that this is pretty much this is kind of almost like a copy and paste. Like, guys, I did something wrong. I'm leaving because I know I need to be out of the limelight. But what it really is like, hey, I have enough money to take a step back and like wait out the cancel culture and not have to take true accountability. He says a few nice words about how he was like, oh, they were young and he was kind of shitty. I feel like it's a cop out. He should have made a video that said, hey, listen, like, I fucked up here, here, and here. Be direct. Be sincere. We were this age. Give us the proper framing. Instead, this just seems like a cop out. It seems like a cop out. Again, I think what he did is shitty. I don't think that it means he's a fundamentally shitty person. I think that young people can be very shitty. I think that there's a lack of education on when it comes to just like pro-choice rhetoric in general, where people think that pro-choice means that men get to like have this like social, or this like they get to gaslight the fuck out of women into getting abortions, which is not something that you should be able to do. There's a lot, we're not having the right conversation about pro-choice, where it's like, it's the woman's choice. I know we like to say that, but we don't know what it means. A lot of people think it means that men get to be like fucking whatever, you know. Obviously, I'm a little off-put by the editing in this video. I'm a little off-put by the advertisement in this video. I also understand, you know, you got to make your money. She did put it at the end of the video, so she kept it out of there. It's for people who wanted to keep watching and support her and potentially use this particular service. But I also know that I don't know. It still does kind of bother me a little bit. There's a lot here that bothers.
Oh my god, this woman.
There's a lot of things here on both sides that frustrates me a little bit. This is the problem with the YouTube drama framing here. This is obviously her best video by far in a long time, and I mean, she might have known that when she made it. I don't think that it makes her words any less genuine, but I think that it makes it more difficult to take it as genuine. Does that make sense? You know, I don't know. I feel like there's no benefit in him making a video response to her, not even her concerns or feelings, but just appeal to the court. But no, I don't think that it's, so that's what, okay. So when I say that I think that he should make a video and that what his response is a cop out, what I'm saying isn't, I think that he should try to make a response to his fans. His fans are meaningless, right? So his fans don't matter, right? If something like, if some kind of accusation came out against me, right, you know, where I did like a shitty thing with somebody in the past, we're not making a video for my fans to make me think that I'm a good person. Like, oh guys, I'm still good. It doesn't matter. You know, you're supposed to make a video that's just genuine, speaking about your perspective on the situation. Let people decide what they decide. That's one of those problems where we look at these types of situations of like, oh, we need to make response videos for fan. No, he needs to make a response video for information, if that makes sense, right? Because fans obviously are going to eat it up. But to me, again, like, this is one of those things where it's like, it's a cop-out. It's like, hey, I have a lot of money. I'm going to take a step back, and I'm not going to really be in the limelight while this cancel culture-esque narrative goes through. That's like his perspective. He knows this is the safe play, is to be like apologetic and say I'm taking time off and to walk away for a little bit until everything blows over. Like, that's pretty standard. That's your standard bullshit narrative, like your standard bullshit. Like I said, I don't think he's a terrible person. I don't like the dishonesty of this response, because I know that it's really just another, you know, bullshit walk-off, and I'm a little uncomfortable with the editing in this video and the plugging of an advertisement at the end of it. Overall, pretty fucked up stuff. It's definitely worth listening to, and I would encourage people who listened to this, that were super critical of her, to watch it again and relax.